Your moderator today will be Harrison Parker. He's Director of Education at NetRef. Harrison will be talking today about how to keep learning progressing when schools go remote. Harrison has worked for education technology companies that support K-12 schools and districts for over 10 years. He specializes in implementation and integration of web-based learning and has worked with small private schools all the way up to the largest public schools in the districts in the US. Harrison heads up the NetRef program and is responsible for incorporating customer feedback into new products and features. NetRef is used in over 30 states in the US to help keep students on task and ensure schools are increasing academic achievement in traditional, hybrid, and virtual learning environments. Harrison will be joined by a group of panelists, but I'm going to let him introduce everyone. So again, thank you for joining, and we'll hand this over.
Thanks for the introduction, Bethany. Let me share my screen here. We'll get going. So we're really excited to be sponsoring today's breakout panel discussion around keeping students engaged while they're learning from home. You know, this is a really pertinent topic right now. Whether schools go completely virtual or for a short period of time, or they offer a hybrid instruction model, it seems likely that almost every teacher will have a few students, if not all of their classes, learning at home for some point this school year. One of the biggest challenges with remote learning will be keeping students engaged and identifying those students who might be struggling. So to help us discuss remote learning and keeping students engaged, we've got some great education leaders and experts who have joined today's panel. Rob Demuse is the Director of Technology at Mauston School District in Wisconsin. Rob has been the IT director there for over 20 years, and before his transition to an IT director, he was in the classroom as a business teacher. He believes technology can personalize and shift learning to being more student-centered. Dr. Fred Hickman joins us from Mississippi. He is the Assistant Superintendent at Kemper County School District. Dr. Hickman is also a former teacher, a former history teacher, and he's been an educator for over 20 years now. The cornerstone of his instructional and administrative philosophy is centered around blended learning and understanding the value of web-based instruction. Phil Hentz is joining us just outside of Chicago. He is the Director of Student Information at Barrington 20 School District. Phil has received recognition for his outstanding work in ed tech by being awarded CTO of the Year by COSIN and Outstanding Leader of the Year. Craig Johnson is Director of Technology at Randolph School District in Wisconsin. Craig is responsible for technology run in Randolph, and in his past has served as the Cooperative Educational Service Agency 5 in Wisconsin. Finally, Jason is joining us from Georgia. He is Director of Instructional Technology and Media at Forsyth County Schools. Jason is also a former teacher and at the high school level, and is now responsible for incorporating instructional technology and media into the curriculum for teachers and students throughout his district, which is about 50,000 students. Before we jump in, I did want to mention that in addition to some of the best practices for keeping students engaged that we are about to discuss, NetRef is a classroom management software that gives teachers the ability to keep students on task while they're learning at home through granular allow lists and block lists. In addition to being able to pick up what websites your students can go to in real time, NetRef is also providing administrators with remote attendance reporting this year. For more information, you can check out NetRef in the sponsors section of the ConnexionEd app or at net-ref.com. To start things off, I thought it would be great if we could briefly hear from each of you about what learning will look like this fall. So, Phil, why don't we start with you, if you don't mind?
Sure. Sure, yeah. Well, up until last Wednesday, we were going to do not a hybrid approach, but kind of a dual learning approach where we are a K through 12 school district with about 9,000 students, and we were going to have those students that wanted to be in person could be in person, or they could choose, parents could choose to opt out and opt for distance learning. So we sent a survey out at the beginning of July asking for that information and received the information by July 24th. And at July 24th, we realized that 30% of our 9,000 students wanted to be distance learning. And as we started doing the math and for Illinois and for the CDC guidelines to be able to have social distancing in the classroom, we quickly realized that we were not going to be able to match up and be able to have, when you take a classroom that normally holds 25 students and now can only hold 11 students, we quickly realized that that was not going to happen, not going to be able to happen. And so based on the data we got back, and so we had to reverse course as of last Wednesday, and we have decided to start distance learning right off the bat until the foreseeable future. And you can imagine that some parents are kind of irritated at that, so we're working through that and working for some solutions for that, including the ability to have some students back on campus, particularly in special education, the ones that really need one-on-one. We're going to be able to accommodate that, but just the core classes, they will be remote until further notice here in Illinois. So, and a lot of districts around us are doing the same thing. They're reversing courses as they realize that the virus is getting worse in our areas, and they really can't meet all the guidelines that seem like a moving target every day. So.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I know, it's not even state by state right now. It can be neighborhood by neighborhood almost. So it's up in the air, and I know it's going to be challenging. Dr. Hickman, what does it look like right now for your district in Mississippi? What are the plans this fall right now?
Similar to Phil, our approach is, as of August 10th, online learning for all students. We're also using, because internet connectivity is a challenge in the rural areas where we're from or where we're located, we're also using packets. Unlike Phil, we have a lot less students, having only approximately 1,000 students in the small district. We're able to reach out a little bit more, a lot more with the students, as they can come and pick up packets and deliver those if internet connectivity is a problem. We've addressed internet connectivity with AT&T as we're running fiber to certain community centers to make sure the students have the upload and download ability. And if they don't have that ability in the homes. So what we'll do is from the 10th through the 26th, our plan is online learning. After that, the 10th of August to the 26th of August, it's going to be strictly online and or packet pickup. After that, then we're offering options. That's once again similar to Phil.
Perfect. And Jason, what are your district plans in Forsyth County? I know you guys have a ton of students, so I'm sure you've got a lot of different options there.
Yeah, we have about 51,000 students, and our first day of school is a week from Thursday, so August 13th. We gave parents the choice to go online or come in person. We had about a third of our students choose online, maybe a little bit more than a third, maybe around 35%. And so our 6 through 12 students will be served through our virtual academy, which we've had in place for about 12 years. But for our K through 5 completely online, that's going to be a brand new game for everybody. So we have some schools, one school in our county has over 80% of their student body learning remotely, virtually from home. And it's a quarter-long commitment, so it kind of goes with our grading terms. So at the 6-week point, we'll survey parents if they want to opt back to in-person or switch to virtual. They'll have the ability to do that at that time. And for 6 through 12, it's a full semester. Our plan, so our parents, if they feel comfortable sending their children to school, they're going to do so a week from Thursday for the ones that are coming face-to-face.
So not much time to get ready then.
Our high schools are going through a massive schedule change process right now because their deadline was July 31st. So they got a lot of work to do in the next few days.
Yep, and it kind of goes to Phil's point about a somewhat moving target right now. Craig and Rob, I guess we'll finish up with you two in Wisconsin, and just in terms of an overview of what it looks like in your district for this fall and what you're planning on. So, Craig, why don't we start with you?
Well, we're an even smaller school, so I mean we're only about 550 students, so we still have a lot of the same challenges. Being rural, one of the biggest challenges we have, if we were to go all virtual, is connectivity. It's a huge problem out here. The cell towers they're there, and they keep touting that other 5G, but it doesn't matter if the lay of the land prohibits the signal from going through and getting to the homes. So that was a big problem that we had in March when everything got shut down. But coming into this school year, when we start in early September, we're all in. We're bringing the students in. It's a bit of a modified schedule where they're going to allow parents to choose if they want to keep their homes for virtual. We're going to accommodate that. We're going to adjust the schedule a little bit so that students go home about 45 minutes earlier than what they normally would, so that the teachers that are going to be supporting students working virtually have that time to set aside so they can have that and prep time to be able to do it. But they're going to be expected to be able to teach their classes synchronously virtually if that were to be the case. So if we end up having to go all virtual, we're going to have that ability to do that. We're starting a one-to-one initiative with Chromebooks and iPads. On top of it, that will allow every student to have a device to be able to get home, and then we do have hotspots available to do the best we can. But the download speeds were fine with the hotspots. It's the upload speeds that become a huge problem with any type of video learning. Or if we've got a couple of families here that have like 5 kids in the district, so short of giving them 5 different hotspots to be able to accommodate the traffic that they're going to need. There are some different struggles that come along with the rural side.
Sure. And Rob, I guess you're in a similar, I spoke to you earlier today, and it sounds like you were in a similar position as Craig, and that you guys are going to try and start in person in September. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. We did pretty much what everybody else did. We did a survey. We have 3 options on the table. First one is to bring all the kids in. That's what the majority of our families surveyed said they wanted to do. I think it was over 54% want to start in person. Then the second option is to do virtual. The second option is to do like an A/B schedule where you bring half the kids in one day and the other half the other day. So when they're home, they do the virtual. The third option is virtual. Our superintendent said that we would probably switch between all 3 depending on how COVID responds in our area, because, as CDC says, 2 or more in one building's an outbreak. So that whole building might go home for 2 weeks and do virtual, come back in on an A/B schedule, then transition back to in person and kind of go through that whole cycle, wash, rinse, repeat as needed throughout the year. We're about 1,500 students, K-12. We have the same issues Craig has. We sent 145 hotspots home in the spring when, we sent the kids home in March from COVID. So kind of looking at all the same things everybody already mentioned, so I don't need to beat that horse to death again. So.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I guess when this first hit us in March, everyone was going at home, and you were having to struggle to figure out how to get the devices in their hands, and then also figure out who didn't have the appropriate internet connections. How did you guys determine who needed hotspots? Did you guys send out polls? How was that figured out? And Rob, if you want to answer that, or if anyone wants to jump in.
I can answer that. Since we didn't have a lot of time, we basically had 2 days from the time we decided that the kids were going home until the time we needed to get the hotspots out. So we basically just went off, do you need one? We didn't really vet anybody. We didn't have time to vet people. We had people take them that had decent internet connections but felt like their kids were home from college, so they weren't going to have enough bandwidth. So they just went ahead and took one. As we go through this time around, we're doing a little bit more vetting. We're trying to make sure they really need one instead of just trying to get some additional access off the school's dime. So that was kind of problematic. The other thing that was really problematic for us is we got 100 hotspots initially like everybody else, but then we had another 100 on order, and which were completely wiped out and canceled. We had to go through a different provider to get the additional hotspots that we sent home. And so now we're in a position where we have one provider with 100, another provider with like 50. So, which isn't the best situation, but that's what we're doing.
And I think a few of you mentioned the challenge with these hotspots or just the home connection in terms of really on the upload speed side with if you're doing these Zoom meetings like we're doing now. What are a lot of your teachers doing in terms of those meetings if they are synchronous? Are they just using, Google Meet or Zoom meetings? How are they keeping tabs on what the students are doing in the classroom while they're at home?
Well, we're using Google Meet. That's what
Okay.
As far as being a G Suite school, let's utilize the tools that we're most familiar with and that are inherently built into the systems that they're already using. There's different reporting tools that you can use for that. I just found an extension regarding the Google Meet attendance counter that I've just played with this morning that I'll be sharing with my teachers today or when they come back for their pre-service meetings to show who's in the meetings, how long they were there, and it's broken down by classes and things like that. The hardest part is making sure that everybody was on that same page and that we had this continuity across all grade levels in the staff. I mean, some staff members wanted to use Zoom, some wanted to use Google Meet. Some were, I'm not really sure what their plan was to go for it, but now I'm trying to we have time now, we've had the summer to put a plan together and say, hey, we are going to use this platform, that's the platform everybody's going to use. Here's the best practices that we're going to do. Here's the training and how we're going to set it up so you don't, if you're using Zoom, you don't get Zoom bombed, or you're using Meet, you don't have people coming in that aren't going to get in or shouldn't be there. And using those type of practices and making sure that everybody's on that same page. Because if we end up going full virtual at home, one of the biggest frustrations we heard from families was that, well, I've got one third grade child and one sixth grade child, and the teachers are using two different platforms, and they're struggling trying to get that to learn it themselves. So that was kind of one of the bigger projects that we had to come through. Just make sure everybody's on that same page and use the tools that are readily available to us that are inherently built into what we have.
Yeah, that's a good point. Jason, were you going to say something? Or you popped up? So. Not to put you on the spot there.
We're very similar. We used Microsoft Teams and Google Meet. We supported both for our teachers, and we encourage them to embed those sessions, or we can embed them within our LMS so it's already in their classroom, and they just launch it from there. And this year we're looking into actually syncing our student information system with Teams so that each class actually has a team so that recorded sessions can easily be found at any point in time to increase the collaboration and communication within the courses.
Yeah, that's great. That's neat. How many of you are doing asynchronous learning to some extent for a particular grade level?
We are in Kemper County simply because, once again, I go back to the internet connectivity piece. The students can go and download the information. They can go to the schools or library or to Subway and download the information and then complete the information and then upload the information. Although we're working with every entity that is available in Mississippi to help with the broadband situation, asynchronous is the only possible way for us to get quality instruction, especially 7 through 12. Now, interesting tidbit, because I started this position in February and COVID hit in March, so it was very, very interesting to we're the babies, we're the infants, but what we are learning is that the the staff and the students are responding with the instructions that we're putting forth, or the ideas that we're putting forth.
Okay, perfect. Now, so if you're doing asynchronous learning, how are your teachers keeping tabs on students' progress and working through the assignments and that sort of thing?
Currently, what we're doing is we're as a plug, I guess, for the session NetRef. NetRef has one of the things we saw early on is that you all had one of the ideas, and Emily can probably help more with this, but we basically can function. We can see exactly what the student is doing. We can see how long the student has been on that particular area. And what we do is per class, or per lesson plan, if you will, there's so much time that the student would need to spend, and we are able to mark that time or check that time, and that time determines whether or not that student gets the credit for the information.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and I know we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, rolling that out for your district, and Emily just put that in the chat, but that is something that NetRef added this year to make sure that I think in particular, if your students are in an asynchronous environment where you can't look at them in a Teams or a Google Meet session and physically check them off as being present, one way to keep track of what's going on is just to make sure that that the tools that you deem as being educational or being on task are being tracked, and then you can set the threshold as to what you want for them to spend on it each day. For those that well, I guess I should say, going back to the spring, what were some of the biggest lessons that each of you learned? Because we were all just kind of hit with this, and Dr. Hickman, especially you, since you started in February, then all of a sudden it went from in-person to remote really quickly. But what were some of the biggest things that you guys struggled with in the spring, and how you addressed them going into this school year? And that's for anyone. Phil, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I was going to say, I was fortunate. My former school district that I worked with, we were one of the first school districts in the state of Illinois. We were a K-8 district at that time, and Illinois had started doing piloting a program for e-learning for inclement weather days. And this was about 4 years ago, and we got selected as being one of those districts that could do that, simply because we could pretty much guarantee online connectivity, and we already were one-to-one as a district. When I say guarantee online connectivity, we ended up utilizing Khajiit mobile hotspots at that time, and utilizing Title I funds to do that, and having our principals actually do the background check, if you will, or the vetting of the parents and the families that needed that. And preparing for e-learning days, those are days here and there. The thing that we learned that slapped us in the face here in the spring was it's preparing for 1 or 2 days is way different than preparing for the rest of the school year type of thing. And so we really had to think outside the box. And that was something we were already having our teachers do, to think of learning from home and utilizing that as a flexible learning environment, meaning that, it's a great opportunity to utilize some of the things that might be at home in a lesson, where that might not be in a regular classroom. For example, if you want to teach math or science, and you happen to have some baking goods at home, why not do some measuring of chocolate chips and flour, and put that all together, and you got chocolate chip cookies in the process, and at the same time you're learning. So we were asking our teachers to really think outside the box, and we continue to ask our teachers to utilize that flexible additional classroom now as they think about remote learning. We think that's very important, to utilize whatever is available to them, whether it be virtual or what have you. And that's a way that we've been able to engage students in a new way. For example, PE class, if the students went outside and shoveled snow, and somebody videoed them that, we basically have evidence of them doing aerobic activity, So those are the kinds of ideas that we needed to shape the thinking of our teachers so that they could, make lemonade out of the lemons we've been dealt, really. So I think that's still important. I think states all across the United States are going to be requiring their school districts to have a much more rigorous online learning experience this time around. Hopefully we had enough time to teach teachers how to do that and to get a little more comfortable with that, so that you know, this is kind of navigating the new normal. So.
Great. And anyone else, was there any big fires that you had to put out in the spring that you now are ready for in the fall?
I would say one thing, again, to put a plug in for NetRef, is we did a pilot of it this spring, and we found out that we sent the kids home in, you know, a big hurry. We basically had 2 days to get devices in kids' hands and get them home. And so later on, after teachers started playing with NetRef and getting into it more, and I would look at it and see that there wasn't a lot of engagement. So what I ended up doing was, not that we're trying to be punitive, but I ended up blocking about 24 of the most popular social media sites, because I even had parents actually contact me and say, hey, is there any way to get my kid off Messenger? Get them off Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, whatever. So I just went through and found all the sites right in NetRef, what was reporting a kid, you know, the most used sites, and just ended up doing block list rules on them. And so then that kind of forced the kids back on task a little bit more. And so then teachers had the ability to go in and say, wait, you know, you weren't on at all yesterday or today. You never joined our, you know, Google Meet session, Zoom session, what have you. And then it was an easy way for them to follow up and try to get the kids back on task and make sure they were doing what they were supposed to be doing.
Great. Yeah, we're excited that you know, in the classroom we're used to being in that environment where teachers can lock students into certain sites, but I think even more so now that students are not physically with their teachers, it's hard for them to ensure that they're not opening up another tab and streaming a Netflix video or you know, watching something else. Yeah. While they're staring at the Zoom call, and then they got their other monitor over there watching whatever they are. So glad that worked out for you guys. What else? Jason, Craig, anything you guys saw in the spring that you changed?
I think the big thing we had, there was a huge disparity between how comfortable teachers were with using a lot of this technology, that they just weren't used to using it. So there were some that already had flipped classrooms, and they were really utilizing the Google Classroom a lot, and they were very fluent with it. And then we had some that basically had to learn it on the fly within 2 days, and those are the ones that were really struggling. And yeah, I can help them through it, but they have to understand that I'm not the end user of it. I'm not a teacher. So yes, I can help them get set up, but if they really want to truly get proficient at it and learn more from it, that's when they got to start leaning on their colleagues a little bit more that are using it and things like that. But there was a pretty big gap between, you know, a lot of the teachers that were having to use this technology that never had to use it before. And they could have been in the room right next door to another teacher who's been using it for the last 5 years since its conception. So that was a pretty big hurdle.
I think one of the biggest things that will change moving into this fall is just the amount, what we call in teacher presence in the online course, and to really personalize that, almost acting like probably something a teacher would feel like you're going overboard with, from everything from, you know, instead of writing the directions, record yourself speaking or take a video of yourself giving the directions for the day. Also making sure that you have clear communication and even design for the user experience. But our survey data, as well as our observational data that we did in May and June, really showed that students had a much better experience if the teacher had a large presence in that classroom. Even from doing things like personalizing their quote-unquote course in their LMS as their classroom with different like Bitmoji and animated GIFs and things like that, things that we've kind of walked them through and kind of put out there that, you know, are going to be expectations this year if you're teaching online. And really getting our administrators to get on board with that as well, because that execution is going to occur at the school level, to be honest, and we need our school level administrators to kind of be on the same page. So a lot of our work since our administrators came back in mid-July, and then teachers last week, have kind of lined up with that, from, you know, clarity, teacher presence, and, you know, how to create engaging activities, And so we've been doing training on the tools on how to do that, and then our next set of training is just going to be more of the approach and best practices once we're comfortable with those sets of tools that we've asked them to learn.
So have you parsed down what you were doing before, Jason, in terms of all the tools that you had accessible in the classroom to just a core group that you want to use more efficiently now, or are you trying to get them to expand even further from where they were in the spring?
Probably we want them to expand some, to be honest. We want them to be familiar with their curriculum that we have online, from Dreambox to our Pearson Math. But certainly our LMS, they have to be proficient in our LMS that they're going to teach online, and making sure that they know how to do a screencast, they can record a video of themselves. Just, some minor things like that we'll have some teachers that they've got that, and other teachers, they're having to go through a growing pains right now with that.
So I was going to add to that, as we were asking teachers to think outside of the box, as I mentioned before, one of the things I like about NetRef is the ability for teachers to kind of place an app request. So we're trusting that teachers are the professionals to vet out the appropriate tools for each of their students. And, you can look as NetRef as being a restrictive tool, which it can be and appropriately. But I also think it can be, a positive tool where teachers can request those things and then see where that goes once they've chosen it, and see what the opportunities, if it truly is going to be used the way you thought it might be used. And so I like, that's one aspect of NetRef I think is pretty cool.
One of the original instructors at community college online, on the online platform, the Mississippi Virtual Community College, I can tell you that very much so, as we're here where the IT meets the instruction or the learning piece. I have studied, I've researched blended learning since 2004, and I can tell you that the teachers will learn, the teachers are going to have to learn, and then the students will learn. You all, the IT especially, have seen that, I'm sure, but in my understanding and through the research that I've done, it is very, very clear that the teachers must be open to these ideas. Before I became at this job I was at, I worked with the Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, which is an indigenous tribe, only federally recognized indigenous tribe in Mississippi, and we set up the high school completely blended. And upon doing that, it made things a whole lot smoother and understanding. And one of the things that was interesting is the majority of my teachers were retired. They were retired from the state system and came to our this federal system. And what happened is that the students were able to learn at a lot better. It was a lot deeper learning and a lot more exponential learning because of the use of the online component.
Yeah, that's great. And Phil, to your point that you mentioned, and Dr. Hickman, your point just now, Phil, in your district's preparations for bad weather, and then Dr. Hickman just in the past and using more blended learning instruction, I think in some way over the past 10 years now that we've incorporated more instruction into the classroom, it prepared us a little bit better for this. No one was quite prepared for it in March, but I think with all of the web-based instruction that's been working its way into the classroom to promote, individualized learning and just enhance what the teachers were already doing has somewhat helped us be prepared to go remote when we need to. That said, I know we've got a few challenges with distributing devices and the hotspots that we already mentioned. We didn't really get into that at the beginning. Are most of your districts one-to-one now, or what does that look like for everyone?
We're going one-to-one. We had been talking about it in the past. COVID pretty much forced us into it at this point. We were fortunate enough where we're essentially one-to-one internally to start, so we didn't have to do a huge cash outlay to make it happen. But we're going one-to-one with iPads, 4K through first grade, and then 2 through 12 will be Chromebooks. And at that point, the 6-12 classes, they'll take them all home. And then the 2nd through 5th grade, they're in cabinets in their classrooms, but they're assigned. So at that point, if we end up getting shut down, or if a classroom does get quarantined, we can easily pull those charge cords out of the cabinets and bag them up and send them home with those students, so that they can at least have a virtual learning at that point.
This will be our 9th year coming up here. 1-to-1, 9,000 students, K through 12, 24/7 learning, iPads. We chose iPads in all grade levels. Another point for NetRef is the fact that it handles all operating systems. And there are some companies that are similar that do only handle just Chromebooks, and that obviously wouldn't work in our district, but having a cloud-based solution like NetRef allows it to be truly device agnostic.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing that Craig's doing. We're sending Chromebooks are going home, grades 6 through 12. Grades 1 through 5 have Chromebooks in the classroom. We set them up in a way where we rewired we had these Powergistics towers where we took the cords out of the back and mounted them on the side now. So if the kids need to go home, they can just easily grab a power cord and go. We're iPads grades 4K and K. Otherwise, we're Chromebooks 1 through 12, 1-to-1. So we'll be covered if we float through that virtual back to AV, back to in-person schedule that we're planning to do September 1.
Perfect.
We're almost 1-to-1. For any of our students who signed up for virtual learning, they had the option of checking out a Chromebook if they needed one. And anyone that's in school, we have one Chromebook that's going to be assigned to 2 kids. They're not going to be shared across the classroom. So it'll be limited for contact tracing or anything like that that would be needed. And then we're also encouraging our students to bring their own technology to fill in any gaps we may have.
That's good.
We're doing a little bit of everything we've heard. Craig, we're definitely, we're almost 1-to-1, and now we're going to be pushed over to 1-to-1, and BYOT is something, or BYOD is something, Jason, that we're also are attempting in our district.
I was going to add one thing that we actually named our 1-to-1 program. Actually, we call it 1-to-World, and that is because we know that and the one is actually the student in that case, and the world is whatever technology is going to be coming, whatever the flavor of the day. We want our students to be prepared for utilizing whatever tool is best for them. So,
I like that.
Yeah.
So we've covered the rollout of hotspots, devices, asynchronous and synchronous learning, polling all of your parents. I know you guys have done a ton to get things ready for the school year, but kind of as we wrap things up, as the final takeaway for everyone in the audience, what would you say is the biggest challenge, and how do you think you're going to solve remote learning for students and making sure that they don't get distracted or that they don't fall behind, that that they are staying engaged?
Well, one of the things that we're doing this year is we added 5 more PD days for our staff. We bought devices for our staff. We ended up with standardized on a professional grade, or at least that's what our teaching and learning director's calling it. We bought some Acer spin books, the 2-in-1. They're kind of spendy, like the new model's like $700, but we bought enough for every teacher to have one if they want one. Not every teacher opted for one. Some of them like to use their own equipment. They have maybe a MacBook Pro or Air or something else, or Windows machine that they really like. But anyway, we made it possible for them to get that device, and so we're going to have a lot of training on how to use that device. It's got a nice stylus built into it. It's got like the Wacom tablet writing. It's really, and they can, if they get back in the classroom, they can cast it to their panels in their room and other things like that. But we're pushing ahead with a bunch of PD to make sure that they're in a much better position. Like Craig was saying, we had a huge gap too between people that were really comfortable with it and people that didn't really know what the heck was going on. So we're trying to get everybody to the point where they're really comfortable and they feel good about if they get told to go home for a couple weeks, that they'll be able to deliver some quality instruction and not just, pass the time away to get, to fill in that space of time until they can come back again. So.
That's great.
I was gonna add, I think one of the biggest challenges and the thing that scares me the most, especially when we announced last week that we were gonna go completely virtual right from the get-go, is the reality that a lot of our parents have to work, and where it's both parents that are having to work, and there's nobody left at home because there's no childcare. Childcare is going to be a real issue, I think, across the nation. Substitutes teachers are going to be, because if you think about teachers as well, some of the teachers are going to opt out of learning by getting medical excuses in some ways for reasons why they can't come to school to teach or what have you. And so my fear is that there will be students out there that won't have anybody home to guide them through this process. And one of the ways we are attempting to address that is we actually bought into a service called Meta, which actually provides an online experience for counselors and for social workers that students could reach out to if they had questions or just concerns. They could actually tap into. It's almost like like going to the doctor nowadays with having a telehealth. It's kind of a telemental health, if you will, system. And we're hoping that some of our kids will, especially our older kids that are struggling with how to make this work, and not having necessarily the guidance that they need to keep them on task. So. That's going to be a struggle, and that's something I think we're all going to have to face and figure out. And I wonder if technology will be able to help in that area too. So.
That's great. Craig, Jason, what do you guys think is going to be really the biggest key to making sure that students don't kind of fall behind as they're learning from home?
For us, I think it's using all the different tools we have, from our single sign-on portal to our LMS to NetRef, to kind of get a total picture of what students are doing if they're not in the face-to-face setting. We're having a lot more synchronous sessions be included as part of our base curriculum moving forward to create the connectivity. So that, and then also helping teachers understand how to transfer just the formative assessment checks they would do in a normal classroom, how to transfer that over to a virtual environment and the different things they can do for that, where they can actually observe the student. But the different tools that we have available, and making sure they're well versed in those tools so they know, how they can apply them, that makes the most sense for what they're trying to teach the student. So I think kind of those things.
Perfect.
One of the big stigmas that's got to be changed is the fact that there are a lot of parents that say, well, I'm not a teacher, I can't homeschool my kid. You have to understand, you're not homeschooling your kid, they're being schooled at home. The teacher is still educating the students, so they got to get that mindset really needs to go away. And as soon as people start understanding that, I think it'll be a lot easier. And if the teachers can truly use the tools at hand, whether they're sharing their screens, so that it's basically whatever's being projected up on the board or cast to the board is what the student is seeing at home, there really isn't all that different of an environment, because they can still be taught. It's just like talking to the teacher. You still have that ability to do things like that. Even if they don't have video, they can still have that interaction with the teacher on what's being taught up on the board. Our teachers here use their board projections all the time. They've gone away from using Smart Notebook for the most part, but it's still being used up on the board with an interactive display, or we use interactive projectors here. That can be cast, and it can be shared onto the video meeting through Google Meet or Zoom or any platform that they choose to use. And the students can still be taught at home by the teacher, not by their parents or grandparents. Now, granted, parents and grandparents may need to keep the students focused and engaged. I have kids at home, and I got one of them that, he has a lot of squirrel moments, and, he has to be redirected to get back on task to be part of that, but he has that same problem whether he's in the building or not. So making sure that the parents understand that they're not homeschooling their children, they're being schooled at home, and they might just have to be redirected back to the tasks at hand.
That's a good point. That's great. And Dr. Hickman, any closing thoughts on the kind of the biggest challenge for keeping students engaged while they're at home, and what your plans are to make sure that you alleviate some of those concerns with teachers and parents?
Well, my number one concern, and this is to a specific group of students, which are our exceptional ed students. Our exceptional ed students, there's already a situation in which the student is exceptional at that time that we need to address. And then with this on top of with COVID being, or the way we're approaching COVID being a factor now, it's going to be, that's what keeps me up at night. I'm trying to figure, I'm not, what I have seen with students in my experience with everyone, with things going blended, with people making the choices that they make, I honestly believe that the students will catch up, or people will do well. There are some challenges. But when I think about the exceptional ed student, was just really, I'm trying to wrap my head around exactly how can we make sure we have a self-contained student that's in high school. It's the reason why they're self-contained. And we have to make sure that they're able to get equity in learning. And so that's my number one concern. How we're doing that. We have a great exceptional ed director. I just talk with them, and with her rather, and talk with the staff, letting them know that we're going to have to be exceptional to actually reach these students. And so that's my concern. I'm on my soapbox right now. I don't want to do that, but that is my biggest concern. As far as how this turns out, I think we'll have a meeting, and we have a meeting like this in a year. I think you're going to hear a lot of positive things. I believe Phil can speak to this. They have 10 years of being one-to-one, or maybe Jason, as many help that you all have already, your experience have already seen, that the students will respond. But the exceptional ed students, that just concerns me.
Yeah, no, I think, Dr. Hickman, that's a great point. And that when we look at this in a year, perhaps we're going to be taking some of the stuff that we were doing at home and now bringing it back into the classroom because it works so well. At least I hope that's what we get out of this. I'm looking at the chat window right now. I don't see any questions showing up for these 5 panelists, but if you have any questions, really quickly, send those in. If not, I'll wrap things up by just telling the 5 of you, thanks so much for joining and having this discussion. Thanks really from across the country. I think everyone can say thanks to you guys for doing everything that you've done to accommodate all of the students in this virtual environment and adapting to a really unforeseen circumstance. So thanks so much for you guys for joining. And Bethany, I'll pass it back over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Harrison. Again, thank you to the panelists for your time and insight. And of course, thank you to the attendees for participating in this session. NetRef has posted some very helpful chats during this session. But if you would like to learn more as well and read up more, please feel free to visit them under the sponsor tab in the app. You can actually schedule a personalized meeting with them there, as well as visiting their website. We will be following up. If you filled out the Google form, attendees, thank you. If not, you will get a follow-up email as well. We encourage you to put your feedback in there. And of course, the icing on the cake, there's a code in there for your competition that you're going to want to enter into the app for those giveaways that will be announced every Friday. So again, thank you all. Thank you for your time. And we look forward to seeing everyone at the next session.
All right, take care, everybody.
Good luck.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good